Yes.
So a very good morning to one and all present in this virtual platform. At the very outset, on behalf of School of Civil Engineering, KIT University, I, Dr. Madhulisa Patnaik, coordinator of this FDP program, conveys a warm welcome to our guest, Dr. Manish Kumar Goel, in this online 5-day faculty development program on recent advances in forensic analysis in civil engineering, which is sponsored by AICT Training and Learning Atal Academy during 27 September to 1st October 2021. So today is our last day of this FDP program. So now we are going to start our session 13 on climate change impact on water management by Dr. Manish Kumar Goel. So now I would like to take privilege to introduce our guest. Dr. Manish Kumar Goel is a associate professor and dean of infrastructure development at Indian Institute of Technology, Indore. He is recently featured in the list of top 2% scientists in the world prepared by Stanford University. Also in the top 500, the leading researcher in field of environmental engineering, meteorology and atmospheric science. His research interest includes agriculture, climate, water, artificial intelligence, and GIS remote sensing applications. He worked as a research assistant at University of Waterloo, Canada. He went to pursue further research as postdoctoral fellow at Nanyang Technology University, Singapore, and McGill University, Canada. He was visiting professor at University of Nebraska, USA, and Aristotelian University, Greece. Dr. Goel holds 4 books and 25 book chapter and more than 120 technical research publication in various referred journal. He served as an associate editor for the ASC Journal of Hazardous, Toxic and Radioactive Waste. He has supervised 10 PhD and 8 postgraduate students in the last 10 years. His contribution placed him recipient of Professor S.N. Gupta Memorial Lecture Award, Indian Society of Hydraulics in 2021, Best Research of the Year Award 2020 by Institute of Engineers India, American Society of Civil Engineering, ASC Environmental and Water Research Institute, EWRI Visiting International Fellowship VIF in 2019, Professor R.J. Great Research Award, Indian Society of Hydraulics in 2019, recipient of American Society of Civil Engineering ASC Best Theoretical Oriented Paper Award in 2018, Indo-US AARI Fellowship Award in 2016, DST ACRB Young Scientist Fast Track Grant 2015, Inspire Faculty Award 2014, JSPS Fellowship Award, and University of Tokyo, Japan 2013, and Canadian Commonwealth Scholarship, and many more. So not taking much time, I would like to invite Dr. Manish Kumar Goel sir to please start the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Madhulisha. And I would like to congratulate you and your team to do this Atal FDP program on recent advances in forensic analysis in civil engineering. So many congratulations to you and your team from last, I think, 4 days, 27th of
Thank you, sir,
September
so
to
much.
till this. Thank you so much. And I'm very grateful for the introduction. So thank you so much. And with this, let me start the
Yes, sir.
PPT. Okay. Can you hear the? Can you hear and can you see the PPT?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible and audible.
Okay. So we'll discuss about the climate change and the water resources. What are the issues and what are the challenges in the during last 20 years to last 30 years, as India we are facing, or as a global scale we are facing in terms of climate change. Many of you have heard about climate change during uh, electronic media, print media, what's happening in terms of rainfall intensity, increasing temperatures, global warmings, change in the land use and land covers, greenhouse gas emissions. And this is causing the havoc basically in terms of various extreme events like drought, flood, heat waves, and cold waves, and many other such issues. So we are going to discuss about the basic climate change and how the India is impacting regarding the policy and various extremes in this next 1 hour. Okay, so motivation, just I mentioned to you, in the electronic media, print media, you may be hearing daily news. There is a flood there, there is a drought there, uh, cold waves, heat waves, and many other things. So all these things have been motivating to all enthusiastic researchers why this phenomena is recurring and why they are fastly recurring in the last 20 to 30 years. Whether they were recurring earlier in the before 1970s, 1950s, or now how the changes in the frequency and intensity is happening on these extreme events. So this is the motivation, and you may have seen the report of IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on the Climate Change, that has been released last month. So they have also discussed the many issues of extremes in terms of flood, drought, heat waves, cold waves, joint behaviors of the extremes, and many other things. And that has captured the minds of the general people, how these climate change is affecting in terms of water resources, whether we will have enough water for next 30 years, how it will affect our cities, because we are developing the smart city missions. Many cities are getting flooded. So how we will deal with these kind of circumstances? Many areas of India are continuously witnessing the droughts, part of Bundelkhand, part of Rajasthan, part of Gujarat, and these recurring droughts are coming. How they are influencing the socio-economic status of the people living there. So these are the few challenges that's why we are doing this kind of study. So this is the motivation of one. And sometimes people will ask, what's the difference between weather and the climate? So weather generally we will talk about at the instant basically, or it is in hours. While climate you talk about the decadal scale or the century scale. So scale in terms of time scale, climate is at larger scale and weather is at very, very fine resolution scale. So you have minutes, hours and days. In terms of spatial scale, if I talk about, weather is a very local or sometimes regional. Well, the climate we will talk about either across India, across Asia Pacific, or across the globe. So regional or the global. So these are the basic differences between weather and climate, and we are going to discuss about the climate and the climate change. So what is the climate change? Before we discuss about many other issues, challenges, and their effect on water resources. So climate change is nothing but any long-term significant change in average weather in a given time period of at least 30 years a region experiences. So here are the few things like average weather. What is the meaning of average weather? So average weather generally includes the changes in the average precipitation, average minimum temperature, average maximum temperature, wind patterns. So that is the average weather of a given region experiences in a period of several decades. And there are few factors, they influence the changes in the weather and the climate, like variations of incoming solar energy, properties of the atmosphere and the surface, because these changes alter the global energy cycle or global energy budget. And then you have a change in the land use, land covers, anthropogenic activities, construction activities, industrial activities, and these are the several factors. They are influencing the changes in the weather and the climate change. So with this understanding, we would like to know what are the elements of weather and climates. So as we discussed, the temperature, precipitation, wind, atmospheric pressure, cloud, and humidity. So these are the 6 important elements we would like to study in details in order to understand the weather and climate as well as the conditions of the atmosphere. And all these parameters everybody knows. I think there's no need to give the definition of either temperature, wind, atmospheric pressure, precipitation, clouds, and humidity, because they are used in the general language. And next question comes, who controls? What are the parameters? What are the variables? They control the weather and the climate conditions. First one comes like at what latitude and longitude you are located. Second thing comes like altitudes, how much is the elevation or the height from the mean sea surface levels. So latitude and longitudes, elevations, then you have a unequal distributions of land and water across the globe. Then you have a orientation of the mountain range, because one is a windward where and leeward slopes. In one place you will get a high rainfall, another place you will get a very scanty rainfall. So orientation of the mountain. Then you have a ocean currents, various kind of anthropogenic activities, construction activities, industrial activities. And then you have a nature of the ground surface, and that will also affect the albedo and the how much the changes in the radiations. So nature of the ground surface. So these 7 to 8 parameters, they control the weather and climates. So latitude, longitudes, altitudes, unequal distributions of land and water, the storms in the atmosphere, how's the orientations of mountain, ocean currents, nature of the ground surface, and anthropogenic activities. So anthropogenic activities are the human induced activities in terms of either construction, industrial, or reducing the forest covers. So here are the little bit more descriptions of anthropogenic activities. So anthropogenic activities is something like industrialization, as I mentioned earlier, construction activities, deforestation, and urbanizations. And because in the last 50 years, the man has now emerged as a potent controlling factors of weather and climate. So activities are quite significant, and many studies have been done by taking into the account the changes in the climate, the effect on the water resources and other resources of anthropogenic activities. Okay, so climate change and the climate extremes, because ultimately we need to deal with the climate extremes either in terms of drought, flood, heat waves, cold waves, or many other stuff such that. So climate, as we mentioned, it's nothing but an average weather. So climate, we will take about the statistics of the weather, not just including the average weather, but also the variability for more than 3 decades, approximately 30 years and more, that we are going to talk about. Climate change we have defined earlier, any significant observed change in the statistics of the weather for a long period of time that a given region experiences is called climate change. Climate extremes are the extreme statistics of the weather resulting in extreme weather or extreme events, including unexpected. So you are not expecting that. Unusual is unusual. Severe or unseasonal weathers. So that's how we will define the climate extremes. So climate extremes are the extreme statistics of weather which are unexpected, unusual, severe, and unseasonal weather. Okay, so this is what the motivation that we discussed in the first slide. Rise in the greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere, either due to industrialization or due to the change in the land use and land covers, change in the agriculture activity. So this is affecting the basically global warming and the climate change. And once this are affecting, so they are intensifying the hydrological cycle that we have. And once this hydrological cycle is intensified in terms of intensity, severity, and frequency of the rainfall events and changes in the maximum and minimum temperatures across a region, it results in extreme events either in terms of drought, flood, or many other stuffs. Okay, so with this introduction of the climate and climate change, let us talk about the India, how we are dealing with climate change across the India and what are their effects. So as we know, in India, we got around 1.4 billion populations. And if we talk about the world water resources, we have only 4%. And we are feeding, or we have a population of around 18% across the globe. So with 18% of the global population in India, 4% world water resources and 9% world arable lands, So these are the contrasting data we have. You got 18% of the world population, while we have only 4% of the world water resources and 9% only world arable lands. In addition to that, if we talk about the northeastern part of India, we have a place called Cherrapunji Mesram, where we are receiving the highest rainfall on this planet. While in the western part of India, in the Rajasthan, in the Thar deserts, of 10 centimeter, 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters per annum. So this highly uneven distribution of the rainfall is there across the India. And if you talk about the north part is basically got a snow and glacier, and south you got a coastal line. So all these spatial variations are happening across the India. In addition to that, there has been a significant changes in the precipitation during 2000 to 2015 in India in comparison to last 100 years. So these changes may be indicated as a signature of the climate change in India, and how much these changes that we are going to discuss. So climate change is a big challenge to the water, food security and welfare of 1.2 or now 1.3.5 billion populations across the India. Uneven spatial distribution of the rainfall that we have just discussed. And India has experienced several devastating climate extremes in the recent decades. So one example is here of the drought in 2016. This has affected 330 million people, approximately 33 crores people, and we have an economic loss of $100 billion. And if we talk about the flood prone area, 13.78% of India's geographical area is subjected to flood disasters. And about 33 million people were affected from the flooding from 1953 to 2000. So in India, being a vast country with multifaceted geography, the effect of the climate change on water resources, they differ substantially from one region to another region, one river basin to the another river basins, and it is very difficult to give a generalized solution for all these regions or all the river basins, because everything is changing. Somewhere you have a snow and glaciers, another you have a coastal line, at other place you have a higher amount of the rainfall, at other place you have a lesser amount of the rainfall. So with this multifaceted geography, in order to understand the effect of the climate change, discussion on the issues and challenges on water resources, so they differ significantly from one place to the another place, and they require different kinds of the solutions. If we talk about rainfall projections, so here you can see the annual rainfall data in India from 1901 to 2015. So mean precipitation in 2000 to 2015 for a period like this has happened of 110 centimeters is lower than 1901 to 2015 period of 1139 mm. So now it got in the last 15 years, 2000 to 2015, 110 centimeters. Earlier it was approximately 114 centimeters. So it indicates that dry years are being observed in the recent past and compared to last 100 years. And if we talk about the much more wider scale, the one study that has been carried out using 306 gauge stations across the India, and the data was taken for 135 years, 1871 to 2005. So what they found, no significant trend is observed in annual rainfall on national basis. However, a small decreasing trend in annual rainfall was observed across the India, where a small increasing trend is observed on northwestern and the peninsular India. So at some locations, it has been observed a decreasing trend, while other locations, this has been observed as increasing trends. There is another study on river basin wise. So in several major river basins, the number of rainy days decreased while the number of intense events have increased. Because if you have annual precipitation is constant for across the years, but if a number of rain days are decreasing, in order to get the same precipitation, number of intense events have been increased. So, and another study which has been done using various general circulation models, using various representative concentration pathways, RCPs. So an average annual precipitation is expected to increase by 7 to 18% for various representative concentration pathways by the end of the century using this CMIP5 model, coupled model intercomparison projects generation 5. So this is about rainfall. What is happening in terms of precipitation? What is happening in terms of temperature? In terms of temperature, a warming trend across the India has been observed, with 2016 was the warmest year on record since nationwide record commenced in 1901. So 2016 was the warmest year on the record, and a warming trends we have observed since 1901. And the 5 warmest years are occurred in last 16 years, 2000 to 2016. And how much is the national average of annual temperature showed a warming of 0.22 degrees Celsius per decades during 1971 to 2003. So 0.22 degrees Celsius from 1971 to 2003. Another study that shows that increase in the mean temperature has been observed across the India for a period of 107 years, that's from 1901 to 2007, with highest rise in the Western Himalayan region. So in terms of location, it's the Western Himalayan region where the highest rise in the temperature is observed. And an increase of 2 to 4 degrees Celsius with average temperature across the India is expected using 18 CMIP5 models. Like we have discussed on the previous slide about the precipitation. Here, 18 coupled model intercomparison project generation 5 has been chosen, and this has been taken as 2 to 4.8 degrees Celsius. Okay, and then the annual mean temperature. Here are some few data of annual mean temperature. That's for 1951 to 2014. It was 25.0 degrees Celsius, and while the mean temperature has increased about 0.25 degree in the last 15 years. So here you can see this is the mean temperature of last 15 years, and this is the mean temperature of 1951 to 2015. And mean maximum temperature have been increased about 0.28 degrees Celsius, and mean minimum temperature have been increased by 0.22 degrees Celsius in last 15 years, it's 2000 to 2014. So this may be indicate as a indicator or the signature for the climate change across the India. Now, after discussing the temperature and the rainfall, let us discuss about the runoff, how it is affecting the river runoff. Because now we have a little understanding of temperature and the precipitation, for climate change scenarios. So how the river is affecting the runoff, that we are going to discuss. So if we talk about the Satluj River, that's in North India. So for the Satluj River, a decreasing trend has been observed in last 41 years. From 1970 to 2010, for daily stream flow records, Satluj River has been observed at 3 gauging stations, Kasol, Sunni, and the Rampur. And this basin has an importance because if you remember, there is a dam where they are generating the electricity, and it is used for irrigation and drinking purposes. So if there is this is a concern because of declining trend of daily stream flow at these 3 gauging stations. Another change in the Beas River Basin. There is significant decline in the mean annual stream flow in the Beas River Basin, and a decreasing but insignificant trend for Ravi is also observed. So here you can see the changes in terms of decreasing trends in both Beas and the Ravi River Basin. While the Chenab River basins, there is a statistically significant increase during 1961 to 1995, and that is generally being attributed snow and glacier melting that causes lots of other problems that we are going to discuss while we will discuss the glaciers. So due to this melting of snow and glaciers, there is a increase in the discharge or stream flow in the Chenab River basins. And in peninsular India, if we talk about the Mahanadi River basin, there is a declining rate of 3,388 million cubic meters per decade for a period of 1972 to 2007. So the stream flow is decreasing at the outlet of the Mahanadi River basin. And if we talk about the Brahmaputra River basin, what is being recorded is 1956 to 2007, an increase in the number of particular flood occurrence in Bahadurabad has been recorded, an increase in the stream flow. And for this Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna basin, the long-term mean runoff is projected to increase by 16 to 40% in these river basins by end of this century. So this statistics I gave you to get an idea of various rivers of North India and the South India, how their stream flows are changing in last 30 to 40 years. So having understood the river runoff, precipitation we have discussed, temperature we have discussed, river runoff we have discussed. Now let us discuss about the drought. How the drought impact is there across the India. As we know, drought is like especially extensive events, and that affects the large number of population in India every year. It's a recurring events, and once there is a drought, so it becomes a concern for the local authority and the government to have the drinking water availability, food security, and the socio-economic aspects. Because 33%, approximately 1/3 of the India geographical area is subjected to drought conditions. Sometimes you have a good monsoon, sometimes you have a bad monsoon. So because of this erratic monsoon rainfall, it is a concern of the food security as well as socio-economic vulnerability in a vast geographical area across the India. And if we talk about the last 5 decades, very severe droughts, they hit India in 1960s, year 1965, in the 1970s, year 1972 and 79, and late 90s, 1987, and late 2010, in year 2009, where more than 40% of the land is getting affected due to these drought conditions. So they have been classified as a very severe droughts. Indian Meteorological Department identifies the arid western meteorological subdivisions like Western Rajasthan and Saurashtra Kutch as the most drought affected regions in India, with 31 drought events during 1875 to 2004, 130 years. So these two areas, Kutch and Western Rajasthan, they are most arid regions and they have been mostly affected by the droughts. So in order to enhance the further analysis, what we have done, we have taken the data from 1901 to 2004, and this has been divided into the in the year of 33 years to 35 years, 1901 to 1935, 1936 to 1971, 1972 to 2004. So T1 time span, T2 time span, and T3 time span. 3 time span. So what we have found out that analysis of the drought events have found an increasing trend in terms of drought severity and the frequency during these 3 years. During these three time spans. And a general shift in the drought has also been observed to the agriculturally important coastal southern part of India, central Maharashtra, and the Indo-Gangetic plains. So there is a shift that we have observed across these regions. Another interesting finding that has come in the last 3 decades is there is a decreasing severity in meteorological, vegetation, short duration droughts in comparison with year-long droughts figures. So now we are getting the short duration drought is much higher than compared to year-long droughts. So that is one of the observations in the last 3 decades compared to previous several decades. In this figure, if you see, we have taken the 566 stations across the India, and using SPI, the Standardized Precipitation Index, the 6-month SPI has been prepared, and at monthly rainfall data, it has been calculated for all the stations of 566 from 1901 to 2002. And the trends in the annual drought durations, what we have found out similar to annual drought severity. And if we see the increasing trends, non-significant trends, non-significant decreasing trends, and significant decreasing trends. So increasing trend has been observed at northeastern part, central eastern parts, and the southern parts. While the decreasing trends we have observed at western parts, northwestern parts, and some part of south regions. So at each and every stations, we have found out these trends either increasing or decreasing in terms of average drought severity. So in which of the part you are located across the India, you can see your own location and you can find how the trend in the drought either significantly increasing, non-significantly increasing, non-significantly decreasing, or the significantly decreasing. Okay, so precipitation, temperature, river runoff, drought, and then last we have the glaciers. How the glaciers are affecting, because India has around more than 9,000 glaciers, and they cover approximately more than 18,000 square kilometers area. And the northern parts, Indus, Ganga, Brahmaputra basin, the glacier and their extent, because many times the river runoff, because the river originating from the Himalayan region, Indus, Gangas, Brahmaputras, they are very much important from agriculture point of view, from irrigation point of view, from hydroelectricity power point of view, drinking water point of view. So these changes in the glacier and the extent, how they have been affecting, that we are going to discuss in this part of the glacier. So evidence of long-term mass balance supports a net loss of Indian Himalayan glaciers during the last 4 decades, varying a few. So it means there's a net loss in terms of, if we have carried out the long-term mass balance, there's a net loss of Indian Himalayan glaciers. And how much is this net loss? It means how much is the shrinking rate. So we have taken an example. For instance, the annual rate of glacial sinking is about 0.2 to 0.7% in the Indian Himalayan region for 11 river basins in the period of 1960 to 2004, with a mean extent of 0.32 to 1.4 square kilometers. So this is shrinking at this rate, and this has a, in terms of area, it is 0.3 to 1.4 square kilometers. Here we have given some kind of specific examples. So we have taken a Chota Yasagiri glaciers. Mass balance of this Chota Yasagiri glaciers, 15.7 square kilometer, located in the Chandra river basin of Himachal Pradesh, showed a net loss of about 1,000 meter during 2002 to 2009. The temperatures reconstructed over the last 400 years using tree ring width data of the glacier, Gangotri Glacier, and the western Himalayan region, they indicated that increased winter temperature is attributed to high glacial retreat. So Gangotri Glacier length is around 30 kilometers and area has got 143 square kilometers. So with this tree ring width data over last 400 years, it says there is an increase in the temperature and that is attributing to glacial retreat. And what about the Eastern Himalaya? So in Eastern Himalaya and the Sikkim Himalayan region, there is one study that has been carried out using the satellite images. So the satellite images were taken from LIS-3, linear imaging self-scanning sensor, LIS-3, classified map 2014 were taken for Jemu Glacier to understand how the Jemu Glacier is changing in terms of its extent. So what is found that in the Jemu Glacier, there is a reduction in the snout portion in the images of 2014. And how this has been found out? This has been surveyed, this has been compared with the surveyed topo sheet of the same region of 1935 that has been carried out by the Britishers in the manual surveys. So with this manual survey topo sheet, and now we have taken the remote sensing image. So this has been found, there is a reduction in the snout portion in the Sikkim Himalayan region of Jemu Glacier. So in the glacier also we have covered the both western part of the glaciers and the eastern part of the Himalayan regions. So, and overall it says that long-term mass balance, there is a net loss in the glaciers and the glacier extent. Okay, having understood the idea of precipitation, temperature, river runoff, droughts, and the glaciers. So what are the implications of the climate change and how we can do the mitigation measures? Because India being a developing country, we have a largest population of the global poor, 30%, bird population is approximately 18%, fresh water resources we have 4%, arable lands we have 9%, and coastal line we got approximately 7,500 kilometers, including the island. So it's a multifaceted geography across the India. And the water resources in our country, they are under severe threats of the climate change because there is changes in terms of severity, intensity, and frequency of the rainfall, groundwater recharge, flood and drought disasters, including contamination of surface water and the groundwater resources. In order to tackle these situations of water resources, Government of India has come out with a policy, National Water Policy in 1987, and then they have revised the policy which has come in 2002, emphasize the ecological and the environmental aspects of water allocation in rapid changing scenario. What is going to be happen? Because there are different policies at different government levels, water law continues to remain inconsistent, somewhat adequate in the 21st century because of various elements at local, regional, national, and international and their enforcement issues. I'll give you an example. There was a this one flood plain zoning act. So in 1975, so approximately 45 years back, a model bill, a draft of the model bill was prepared by the central government and it has been sent to all the states for their review and implementation. Many states like Rajasthan, Manipur, they made an act or law using this model draft, but there are many enforcement issues in these regions, and many states have declined to do such kind of law or act like floodplain zoning acts. And many states, they gave the consent to work on it, but they have not worked on it. So there are many kind of local, regional, national issues were there, and their enforcement issues are there. So if this floodplain zoning act was there, so like you have a zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. So zone 1 is something like where you don't have any possibility of the flood. It means construction activities and industrial activities, they can be allowed in. In the zone 3, there is a higher possibility of the flood. So there is a lots of restrictions, and with this, there's lots of permissions and restrictions by which you can do some kind of construction industrial activities, so that the losses due to the flood or due to the higher rainfall will be the less. But this has not been enforced. So next one is like reduction in the vegetation fraction and increase in the urban and bare soil fraction have been observed in India. Incorporation of the land use and land cover change can help to improve weather predictions and the water management. Like weather prediction, like if you remember in the July 2005, there was an event in Mumbai where in 18 hours we got a rainfall of approximately 94 centimeters. In India, we are getting a rainfall, let's say 110 centimeters across the year. You got 94 centimeters of the rainfall in 18 hours. And another example, if I can give you, in June 2013, in the Kedarnath, Uttarakhand, in the 72 hours, we got approximately 38 centimeters of the rainfall. If I remember, another one is Chennai, November 2015. In the 48 hours, you got 48 centimeters of the rainfall. Another one is like August 2018 in the Kerala. In the 48 centimeter, we got around 31 centimeters of the rainfall. So these are the few examples that I am discussing with you of higher extreme events across various places, either Mumbai, Kedarnath, Uttarakhand, Chennai, or the Kerala. And there is a huge loss of humans, infrastructures, flora and fauna, and many others. So in order to combat these future water resources problems, there is an urgent need to strengthen the access of good quality data, because that is missing at various places. So one should have a very good quality of data, upgrade the data collection systems, networks and storage, easily accessible to everyone. And there should be a interdisciplinary research centers at different parts of the country in order to promote, to take up these challenges in water management. Because once we have these challenges and we have these results of these studies, they will assist in making the scientific decisions on water and the climate change policy. So in order to take the forward, what are the implications? What are the things that we can take up? As we have seen, the effect on the precipitation, temperature, river runoff, drought, and the glaciers. The impact of the climate change is expected to increase on these various events across the regions of our country. And the changes in the precipitation, they will affect the water resources planning and management in several ways, including design of hydrogeological structures, flood, drought management, urban planning, and developments. India being an agrarian economy, which relies heavily on the monsoon, because 80% of the rainfall we are getting in the 4 months from 1st June to 30th September, and available of water for production is particularly vulnerable to the projected climate change scenario that we have just seen. Therefore, it is essential to improve the assessment of the climate change effect in order to adapt the techniques using future scenarios. Existing water resources system, they have a major data collection gaps in terms of monitoring, processing, communication, dissemination, and storage network. Therefore, are unable to meet the projected challenges of a rapid changing climate. National Action Plan on Climate Change was launched in 2008. This is one of the mission which was established during the national strategy to address the climate change impacts, mitigation, and the adaptation. And another one, India has emphasized there are two things like 20% improvement in water use efficiency and expanding the forest cover from 23 to 33% of India's territory on the long term. So increase in the water use efficiency and expanding the forest covers. And the measures must be taken to ensure the water resources security and minimize the causes of the climate change and its adverse effects. So these are the few things that we can take up in order to mitigate, adapt the impact of the climate change on the water resources. And once we have understood all this, how these climate change projections that we have just described, how we are getting them. So there are few models, climate models, and based on these climate models, we are getting these data. And how these climate models works, here I will give you a brief introduction. Like climate models, they are basically the numerical models. They simulate the interactions of atmosphere, ocean, land surface, and the ice. And what they do, basically they solve the conservation of mass, momentum, and energy equations at various grid systems. So you can see the horizontal grids and you can see the vertical grids. So whole earth is divided into the various grids of horizontal, latitude and longitudes, vertical grids, height in terms of pressure. And then we are solving these equations of mass, momentum, and energy at various grids. So these global climate models, or sometimes it is called general circulation models, they are based on the physical principles of the fluid dynamics as well as thermodynamics. And that's how we are getting these kind of scenarios. And these climate models, basically, they produce enormous amount of data in terms of richness of different variables, the amount of the time steps. You can take 1 minute, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 6 hours, daily, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, yearly. So at various different types of steps, you are getting the data, and you have various resolutions, 0.5 degree, 1 degree, 1.5, 2.5. So these kind of things are there at for various kinds of data points. And data from this global climate model, they have usually have a spatial resolution in terms of 100 to 300 kilometers, and the temperature resolutions of output varies. So depending on the variables, it usually ranges from 6 hourly data to monthly means data. Here I will give you a case study where we will understand these extreme events that we have just discussed. So in the left and the right hand side, if you see, there are 24 river basins across the India: Indus river basins, Ganga river basins, Brahmaputra river basins, Barak, and other river basins. This is Narmada, Tapi, Godavari, Mahanadi, Subarna. In whichever part of India you are located, you can denote yourself with this river basin. And what we have done here, we have taken data of past 1975 to 2019, observed daily graded precipitation data from Indian Meteorological Department, Pune, and we have taken the future data 2025 to 2095, simulated daily graded precipitation data, NASA Earth Exchange Global Daily Downscale Projections of 21 CMIP 5 GCM. So this is the list of the river basins. In those, Ganga, Brahmaputra, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, Suvarnrekha, Brahmani and Baitarani, Mahanadi, Pennar, Mahi, Sabarmati, Narmada and Tapi. And then you have a west flowing rivers to Tapi river basin, east flowing river between Mahanadi and Godavari river basin, east flowing river between Godavari and Krishna, east flowing river between Krishna and Pennar, east flowing river between Krishna and Kaveri, then east flowing river south of the Kaveri basin. Then you have a west flowing rivers of Kutch and Saurashtra of Luri rivers. Then another minor rivers draining into Bangladesh basin, and another minor rivers draining into Myanmar basins. So you can see 22, and they are 2A, 2B, 2C. So 24 river basins are there across the India, on which we are discussing some of these results. Here what we have taken to discuss, we have taken the extreme precipitation, where we have taken 4 parameters or 4 indices, CDD, consecutive dry days, maximum length of the dry spell, CWD, consecutive wet days, maximum length of the wet spell, R20, number of extreme heavy precipitation days. It means the amount, annual count of the days when daily precipitation is greater than 20 mm. R95, total amount of extreme precipitation, annual total precipitation when daily precipitation is greater than 95th percentile. So here we have taken an example in order to understand these 4 parameters clearly. Let's say 1st April 2020 to 30th April 2020, this is the rainfall, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the random data has been taken to understand these concepts. So 95th percentiles you can get of this data 1 to 30. This has got 28.55. So CDD, consecutive dry days, it means the maximum length of dry spell. So less than 1 mm. So you don't have any less than 1 mm. So we got 0 days. Consecutive wet days, maximum length of wet spell. Wet days when the precipitation is greater than 1 mm. So you can say precipitation is greater than or equal to 1 mm for 30 days. So this has been taken as 30. R20, number of extreme heavy precipitation days in mm, annual count of days when daily precipitation is greater than 20 mm. So you got 11 days. You can see it here, 20 to 30. So 11 days. R95P, total amount of extreme precipitation. It means the annual precipitation when the daily precipitation greater than 95th percentile. And 95th percentile you got 28.5 mm. So this is 29 and 30. So you got 59 mm. That's how we have computed the data for all these years, 1979 to 2005, 1979 to 2019, and 2025 to 2095. So I hope this concept that we are going to discuss, CDD, CWD, R20 and R95 is clear to all of you. So our objective is nothing but to evaluate the trend in the precipitation indices in the past and the future. To develop the spatial variability maps for the flood and drought based on trend characteristics of precipitation indices. Okay, let us discuss about one by one. R20. So in the R20, you can see this is the observed one from 1989 to 2019. You have a RCP 4.5, 2025 to 2055, and 2065 to 2095. And this is the legend of days 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, and the greater than 20. So this figure shows the mean of R20 days for the past and the future. What we have found out, R20 across the past and future is found to be high. It means it's greater than 20 days for northeast region, and the Western Ghats. And if you can see this Western Ghats, and it is low, it means low means 1 to 5 days for part of Rajasthan, part of Gujarat, you can see it here. And during 1989 to 2019, central and central eastern parts, they show moderately high or high R20, means greater than 15 days. Somewhere you can see it here. So central and central eastern parts. And for the future also 2025 to 2055, central and central eastern part, they show the moderately high R20 20 days. So during 2065 to 2095, the central and southeastern part, they show the moderately high R20. In terms of trend and sun slope, what is the aspects at various locations? So if you see during 1989 to 2019, R20 shows both decreasing for Ganga River Basin, northeastern regions, and Godavari Basin and Tapi Basin, and the increasing trends in parts of South India, central, eastern, and western parts. So this is the trend. This is the first graph of trend, whether it's decreasing, increasing, significantly decreasing, and significantly increasing. And this is the sun slope. It means mm per year. So during 2025 to 2055, R20 shows an increasing trends across the country in the future. And this shows a positive trends for the future, especially central and central eastern parts. They show the significantly increasing trends. And let us coming out to the next variable, R95P. In the R95P, if we talk about the magnitudes, 25 to 250, 250 to 500, 500 to 700, 750 to 1000, and greater than 1000. So R95P attain a higher magnitude greater than 500 mm in the Western Ghats and Northeastern region, while the Western region encompasses lower magnitude 25 to 250 mm. And the region with lower R95P covers more area in 1989 to 2019 in comparison to 2025 to 2055 and 2065 to 2095. How about the trend and sun slope? So during the past, it means 1989 to 2019, around 50% of the country comprising the parts of Central Eastern, Western, Southernmost, and Central shows a positive trends. R95P shows a positive trend across the country during 2025 to 2055. And the most significantly, you can see in the northeastern part of region, they show significantly increasing trends. Okay, coming to the third variables, that's a consecutive bad days, CWD. So in the CWD, it's generally high, like more than 25 for Western Ghats, northeastern parts, and it is low 3 to 10 for this part of Rajasthan, part of Gujarat, western part of India. And during 2025 to 2055 and as well as 2065 to 2095, if you see the spatial pattern, they are almost similar. Northeast, Western Ghats, Central Eastern parts, they show the moderately high or high consecutive bad days, greater than 20 to 25 days. However, the trend and sun slopes, overall trend in CWD, consecutive bad days across the country is decreasing during 1989 to 2019. And the CWD mostly shows a positive trend across the country during 2025 to 2055. And if you talk about Upper Ganga River Basin, so it's showing only significant increasing trends. So trends and sun slope across the India for different river basins in the observed and the future. And the last one, you have a consecutive dry days, CWD. So CWD, if you see, is higher, greater than 200 days across the year in the western part of India. And it is low, 34 to 50 in the part of Western Ghat, northernmost part, southernmost parts. And during 89 to 2019, the regions showing moderately high CDD are relatively lesser in comparison to 2025 to 2055 and 2065 to 2095. So this indicates the spatial extent of high CDD, consecutive dry days will increase in the future. How is the trend and sun slope? So it's generally an increasing trends across the India. during 1989 and 2019, but there's a decreasing trends from 2025 to 2055, barring a few exceptions. So what are the final discussion and conclusions? R20 and R95P show an increasing trends in the major segment of the country in the future. This is coherent to the previous studies. Consecutive dry days shows a follow decreasing trend towards the end of the century, which is coherent to the various findings for the monsoon seasons. And this present study, but we have given a just a glimpse, the evaluation of the precipitation extremes. This improves our understandings of the extremes in changing climate and provide a valuable additional information for development of disaster management strategies in India. So here are few limitations that we have discussed. Stationary climate is assumed. There are many GCMs, they may be incorporated. There are many scenarios, RC 4.5 and RC 8.5 are considered. So other climate scenarios can also be considered. So this is a few of the limitations of this study. And these are the references that we have used in the study. I think with this, I will finish it. If you have any question, please ask me before I go to the next session.
So is there any question from the participant? Please do ask. Any questions from participant? I think, sir, in this point, they don't have any questions.
Okay, okay. So, madam, can we take 5 minutes break?
Yes, 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 sir.
Okay, okay. So now after 5 minutes. Okay, after 5 minutes, give just 5 minutes.
Okay, sir. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So participants are requested to stay in connect. Okay. So after 5 minutes, again, this same session will continue.
Mentioned they have a close linkage with the precipitation patterns at specific regions in the world. 30 to 50% of annual precipitation on the west coast occurs in just few atmospheric river events. It's a medium for availability of the beneficial rain and ice, causing the devastating floods and thus influencing the global climatology at regional and the global scale. So that's how the impact of these atmospheric rivers lies. You can see the media coverage also of various atmospheric rivers, atmospheric rivers causes $1 billion damage in a year. The study shows and are getting worse. Another says that atmospheric rivers over the Atlantic blamed for torrential rain. There is a torrential rain and atmospheric river has been blamed for that. Atmospheric rivers fuel most of the flood damage in the US West. So whatever damage are happening, atmospheric river is fueling them, and the climate change will make them worse. Atmospheric river storm can drive costly flooding, and climate change is making them stronger. Atmospheric rivers can bring rain to the Southern California next week. Pineapple Express storm, this is one of the name of the atmospheric river. They have given Pineapple Express. So Pineapple Express storm will bring flooding and snow to the west. So these are the few media coverage you may see in the newspapers. And next time, whenever you got see, you need to make a note or attention of these atmospheric rivers. So what are the points? They are very important from this point of view of atmospheric rivers. So atmospheric river terminology are generally used for moisture plumes, with greater than the threshold. There should be threshold of two things. First is integrated water vapor, how much of the water vapor they have, and how much is the transport, integrated water vapor transport from one place to another place. So this threshold has to be crossed for such moisture plumes, then only they can be named as atmospheric rivers. Not all atmospheric river, they will give the heavy precipitation. Only few will give the heavy precipitation. In order to give the heavy precipitation, there should be some kind of favorable environment where you need to have a strong wind, moisture, and less stable environment. Then only they can give the higher amount of precipitation. And the terrain greatly enhance the precipitation associated with the atmospheric rivers on the west side of the continents. So there's the windward sides and the leeward side. So you will get a higher pressure and then higher amount of the rainfalls. So as per American Meteorological Society, these atmospheric rivers has been ranked from 1 to 5, from weak, moderate, strong, extreme, and exceptional. And what are the nature of these atmospheric rivers and the examples of that? So in the rank 1, air category is weak, nature is primarily beneficial. It means they are benefit for the society in general. Example is given here on February 2, 2017. Atmospheric river AR hit California. It lasted for 24 hours at the coast and produced a modest rainfall. So once it's producing the modest rainfall, it is primarily beneficial, and we will categorize is in a weak category and rank is first. In the rank 2, air category is moderate. This nature is mostly beneficial but also somewhat hazardous. So what is the example for this? There is an atmospheric river on November 1920, 2016 that hit the northern part of the California. It lasted for the 42 hours at the coast and produces several inches of rain that help replenish the reservoirs after a drought. So this is mostly beneficial. Then the third one is characterized as category in terms of strong. So this is the balance of both beneficial and the hazardous. So what is the example for this? An atmospheric river on October 14 and 15, 2016, it lasted 36 hours at the coast, produced 25 centimeters of the rain that helped refill reservoir after a drought, but also caused some rivers to rise to just below the flood stage. Fourth one, you have an extreme where it is mostly hazardous. If you see the primarily beneficial to it has become to primarily hazardous, but somewhat beneficial. So an atmospheric rivers on January 8 and 9, 2017 that persisted for 36 hours produced up to a 35 centimeters of the rain in Sierra Nevada and caused at least a dozen of the rivers to reach the flood stage. Fifth category, we have exceptional, primarily hazardous on December 29, 1996 to January 2, 1997. This atmospheric river lasted for 100 hours, more than 4 days at the Central California coast, and this caused havoc there because of heavy precipitation, and there was a loss of approximately $1 billion. So I hope this is clear from rank 1 to rank 5, AR category from weak to moderate to strong to extreme and exceptional. These are the natures from primarily beneficial to primarily hazardous, and the few examples are given in order to understand these categories. And this is the classification as per American Meteorological Society, AMS. And how is the distribution of AR intersecting the coastal lines? So here you can see this is the India, and rest of the words you can see. Latitudes and longitudes are given in terms of frequency and number of days per year of AR landfalls during 1979 to 2018. So number of days per year, 5, 10, 15, 20. Availability of ARs intersecting the coastal line at 6 hourly time steps. So for 6 hourly time steps, this analysis has been done. Landfalling ARs are more frequent in west coast of North America, southern South America, and Europe. So at these three locations, they are more prominent. Considerable number of landfalling AR at various locations, including Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Northeastern North America, Central America, Northwestern and Southern Western part of Africa. So these are the few distributions of atmospheric rivers intersecting the coastal line across the world. Why to study the air? Why it is important for us as a scientist? Because in order to have the predict, develop the more robust system for weather forecast, you should have an input of AR. In order to have the water resources management, in order to have the flood risk management. So the robust system of atmospheric river is required to have the weather forecast, water resources management, and the flood risk management. Now let me come to technical aspects. What are the technical aspects of these atmospheric rivers? So as I mentioned earlier, there are two things on which threshold has been taken: integrated water vapor and integrated water vapor transports. So integrated water vapor is nothing but you have an altitudes and there is a wind velocity, and then you have an altitude and this is the water vapors. If I sum it vertically, I'll get integrated water vapor, and if I multiply both of them, so with respect to altitude, this is the water vapor transport, and I'm summing it vertically, I'll get integrated vapor transports. So there are two parameters I'm getting: integrated water vapor IWV and integrated water vapor transports IVT. So there are formula for this. IVT is nothing but square root of 1 upon G, 1000 hectopascal, so 300 hectopascal, QUDP whole square plus 1 upon G, 1000 hectopascal to 300 hectopascal QVDP whole square. This is for integrated water vapor transports, and for integrated water vapors IWV, it's nothing but 1 upon G, 1000 hectopascals, 300 hectopascals, QDP. So G is nothing but the gravity acceleration, Q is nothing but average specific humidity, U and V are the zonal and meridional winds in meters per seconds, and dP is nothing but the pressure difference between two levels from 1000 hectopascals to 3000 hectopascals. And the threshold we take for IBT is 100 kilograms per meter per second, and for IWB we take 20 mm for distinguishing an AR. So these are the threshold. We cannot take each and every river as a AR, but for those who are crossing the threshold, then only we need to undertake them as a, consider them as a AR. The maximum moisture lies in the troposphere layer in the atmosphere, which ranges from sea level to 10 kilometers. That's why we have taken so 1000 hectopascals level is few meter above the sea level, and 300 hectopascal is an extended upper limit of troposphere. So it's approximately 10 kilometers. So 0 to 10 kilometers, basically we are doing it from sea level to upper part of troposphere where the maximum moisture lies. So I hope these two terms, integrated water vapor and integrated water vapor transports, are clear in order to distinguish an AR. Okay, so as we have seen in the previous slide, you need three kind of data set: specific density Q, zonal wind U, and meridional wind V. So these three parameters I require in order to get this IWV and IVT. Special resolutions, I have taken 1.5 degree by 1.5 degree for all these three parameters, and pressure levels we have divided into 21 levels from 1000 hectopascal to 300 hectopascal, from mean sea level to upper part of the troposphere, that's 10 kilometers. And these data set has been freely available at ECMFW ERA Entrim on these web pages. So you can see the map of 6 hourly zonal IBT and the meridional IBT integrated vapor transports at time steps of 10/01/2004 6 p.m. So this is a zonal IBT 1 upon G 1000 hectopascal QUDP, meridional IBT 1 upon G 1000 hectopascal 300 pascal QBDP. So zonal IBT, there's the descriptions from kg meters per second for various regions, and here is the for meridional IBT across the world. Okay, How do you characterize an atmospheric reverse? AR is nothing but a combination of the water moisture as well as strong winds. So threshold criteria for the characterizations of AR may depend on various factors: location of the area of interest, whether it's a coastal line or not, seasonal variation, landfalling probability. On these criteria, we will characterize the atmospheric reverse. So what is the methodology for detection of the ARs? First, what we will do, we will extract the original sets of the object based on integrated vapor transport magnitude threshold at each grid cell. We'll divide into the grid, and for each grid, we will take the IVT. Then we will do the IVT direction, length and length to width ratio for these objects, resulting in a defined set of atmospheric rivers. And then we will identify the AR landfalls probabilities. So this is the methodology for AR detection. So IVT we are getting from this formula, square root of 1 upon G, 1000 hectopascals to 300 hectopascal QUDP whole square plus 1 upon G, 1000 hectopascal to 300 hectopascal QBDP whole square. And here you can see the map of 85th percentile mean map for 5 months, May, June, July, August and September. Okay, having understood the physical and technical aspects, let us discuss about scientific aspects of this atmospheric reverse. So how the AR in the changing climates. So there are 6 things that we are going to discuss of the main changes in the atmospheric reverse characteristics under the warming. So frequency, location, precipitation, extreme precipitation, snow and ice melt, flooding, and air frequency increases. So you can see on East Africa, North America, Greenland and Arctic, Europe, South Africa, South America and New Zealand. So in these regions, if there is a red symbol or the blue symbol, they represents increase, and blue symbol represents the decrease. Increase means at East Asia there is an increase or frequency here, or there is decrease in the locations. So, and gray symbol indicates the unknown change. These changes have not been determined till, and background shading illustrates the AR frequency increases based on this paper. So AR frequency where it is increasing, where this is decreasing. So this shows. So you can see this on South Africa. These are the 2 blue symbols. It means the precipitation is decreasing. You can see here the 3 red symbols. These has been increasing. East Asia, this is increasing, and North America, I think 5 they are increasing, either in terms of precipitation, extreme precipitation, snow and glacier melt, flooding. So wherever you are located, either Asia, America, Greenland, Europe, South Africa, South America, New Zealand, and we can see Antarctica as well. So precipitation, extreme snow melt, we can compare these ARs in changing climates. And there are few studies on which they say that under A2 greenhouse gas emission scenario, it means the emission accelerating throughout the 21st century, average AR statistics don't change much in most of the climate models. However, extreme change notably, hence research shows that more frequent and more severe floods in California are projected under the climate change. And another interesting aspects, you can see it here, the projection indicate whether while there will be 10% fewer AR in the future. So in the 10% less or fewer AR atmospheric reverse in the future, but the AR will be 25% longer 25% wider, and exhibit strong integrated water vapor transport under this RCP 8.5 scenarios of IPCC. And once this is longer and higher, so this change will result in the IBT strength under this scenario 50% globally, 50% to the north latitude, 60% to the southern latitudes. So all these things may result in the increase in the frequency of AR conditions. Some people have studied how the AR is related with large scale climatic oscillations, how AO, PNA and others, they are related with various kind of atmospheric river oscillations. Here, the positive phase of Pacific or North American pattern has been linked to more landfalling ARs in the Pacific Northwest, while the negative phase is associated with strong AR activity in the central and southern California offshore in the northern California. However, there have been many uncertainties associated with the linkage of various large-scale climatic circulations with AR individually as well as collectively, because the studies are going on. This is a major and prominent area of the research that has been started a few years back. So still there are many uncertainties with various linkage of these climate oscillations. So finally, in the concluding remarks, the global distribution of atmospheric rivers and the associated large-scale water vapor transport that indicates a critical role of ARs in shaping the global water cycle. And this atmospheric river landfalls occurs on all continents and major islands, which has implications to extreme meteorological and hydrological events and water sources in many locations. Considerably, AR landfalls also occurs in the region where atmospheric river have received less scientific attention, especially in the South and East Asia, Australia, New Zealand. In these regions, there may be a considerable AR landfall. So scientific studies in these regions are required. And regions with more AR occurrence tend to have more persistent AR as well. So where there's more AR occurrences there, they are more persisting at that locations. More devastating ARs are expected to come in the future as per the projections of global climate models with the global warming. So we need to have a proper adaptation and mitigation measures, because these devastating ARs will create a havoc at various places. More focus for better understanding of AR for developing a robust system of water resources management and the risk management is required. Circulation drivers that modulate AR landfall locations and duration, for example, are vital for understanding of AR impact on the land, but it's a key source of uncertainty. So these are the few limitations as well as some of the understandings of atmospheric rivers. I think with this, let me stop here. And if you have any questions regarding atmospheric rivers, please go ahead.
So, thank you so much, sir. The session was very wonderful and very informative presentation. Participants, any questions? Then you can ask. Unmute yourself and you can ask. Is there any question from participants? I think, sir, the session is very clear to all because
okay.
Yes, sir. Everything is clear to the participants. So, sir, it is very honor for me to invite you to as an expert lecturer in this FDP program. And thank you so much, sir, for accepting the invitation. Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Madhusha. Thank you so much.
Okay, sir. So
and there is no question as such. There is no question as such, but let me just give my appreciation that this is totally altogether a new topic, and we all are exposed to a very different concept of this atmospheric river. This is a great value addition of this session. So I am very happy to have this value addition. That is just a feedback, not a question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think atmospheric river, no, very few people are working across the world, and we are the probably first one across the India. We are working on this atmospheric rivers. Thank you so much.
So, sir, with this, we come to the conclusion of this session 13. I thank you all for your valuable presence and for your patience of listening. So now I request you all to kindly switch on your camera for one group photo. Just 1 minute. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
If anybody has a question, they can also write an email. I think Dr. Madhulisa also will share you the PPT that I have discussed just now.
Yes, sir. Definitely. The email ID of sir is with me. If anybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Okay, so participant, we will meet again at 11:30 for our last session. So all of you are requested to join on this same virtual platform. Thank you all.